What's going on, everybody? I'm Ben Hauver, and today I'm here to tell you about the top 5 tournament plays that you can make in week 2 for DraftKings. If you're new to the channel, help us out, subscribe, drop a like on this video. We have tons of content coming out throughout the entire NFL season. We have a Wednesday live stream for sports betting. We have this tournament video. We have Joey's weekly cash video and the late night live stream every Saturday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern. Tune in, ask your questions. We'll go over a final look at every NFL main slate of the season. But today we're here to talk about week 2. So let's dive into it. Week 2 is always an interesting one because people are very quick to sort of disregard the things that we have been thinking for months and months and look at week 1 as gospel, the results, the usage from week 1, and just sort of assume that that is how it's going to be going forward. But as we know, every week in the NFL is different. A lot of things can change on a week-to-week basis. Of course, we do have to absorb the new information we have, take it into account, and update our thoughts and projections going forward. That being said, there is going to always be a lot of overreaction. So in week 2, I always think that you can, capitalize on people's certainty, their over certainty on the spots that maybe are a little bit more fragile than we think, jump on bounce back players that we've been confident in for months, drafting highly in best ball, for example. They have a disappointing week 1 and oh my God, they're a bust, yada, yada, yada. But a lot of the times they can come right back week 2 and reestablish themselves. So some of these players are going to be guys that busted last week. And I think that that is the biggest edge that you can get in week 2 is attacking those types of spots. So with my top 5 tournament plays, we'll start off number 5, Darren Waller at 5,600 is a super interesting play. I think this is the highest totaled game on the slate, and the Raiders have the second highest implied team total, 28.5. Devontae Adams is currently projected to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate, despite the pricey tag that he's got, 8,600. Waller is great leverage on him, and he's coming in expected to be outside of the top 5 highest owned tight ends on the slate. This is a slate with no Travis Kelce. This is a slate where George Kittle, at least at the time of me recording, appears to be on the doubtful side of questionable. So between getting leverage off of Adams, getting exposure to what is on paper the best game on this slate, and then opening yourself up to what is a top 3 ceiling at the tight end position, again on a slate where some of that ceiling is gone, i.e. no Travis Kelce, I think at cost this makes a ton of sense to play Darren Waller as part of your Derek Carr stacks. There are going to be low-owned options on the Cardinals as well. One of them I will be covering in this video. So Darren Waller, 5,600, I think, is a standout play on the week for tournaments on DK. Number 4, at the wide receiver position, sort of continuing on this theme of bounce back players. If you look at this range, there's going to be a lot of guys here with ceilings, right? And a lot of them are going to have ownership, but you know who is not going to have ownership? Right here, Scary Terry McLaurin had only a 9.8% target share last week compared to the 25.4% target share that he held in 2021. This is, surprisingly, I think, the second highest totaled game on the slate. It's a rising total, 488.5, up 4 full points since open, and the Commanders are road underdogs in a dome, facing a team that is ill-equipped to handle the skill set that Terry McLaurin brings to the table. And we just saw last week, right? A.J. Brown went absolutely nuclear against this undermanned Detroit secondary. Curtis Samuel, I'll tell you right now, he's not getting 15 touches per week. I know his last name is Samuel, but that doesn't make him Debo, right? Jahan Dotson catching 2 touchdowns per week, not likely to happen again. Both of these players will carry more ownership than Terry. I think that things swing back Terry's way in terms of target share, and he's priced right between Michael Pittman and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Both of these players are going to draw more interest from DK's player base, virtually unowned with a 30-plus point ceiling in a good game environment. Terry McLaurin is the exact type of bounce-back player that I want to be targeting in week 2. Number 3, sticking at wide receiver. This is probably the ugliest play that I'm going to mention in today's video, but it is one that I have some interest in. It is one that will be in my own personal lineups this week. That is Brandon Aiyuk at 5,100. DraftKings, my guy. I need you to load DraftKings. Bang, there we go. All right, Brandon Aiyuk, 100. The people, right, Vegas, doesn't appear to be docking the expectations that they have on Trey Lance, at least not too hard. It was obviously a rough spot last week. They were borderline playing in a torrential downpour, bad field conditions, bad weather, but Vegas still has the 49ers with a top 5 implied team total on the slate, expected 25.5 points. And the expectation, right, obviously, is that this team is going to put up points. Lance, I think, is going to be stone chalk in his own right this week, but both of his primary pass catchers are flying under the radar. We should expect a more consolidated target share if George Kittle misses. Debo, Brandon Aiyuk, both likely to be under 5% owned this week in tournaments. Debo is, right, obviously the higher ceiling option between the two, and he also gives you positional leverage off of some of the higher price receivers. I like Debo as a one-off, whereas Aiyuk, I think, is the guy that you want to target in Trey Lance stacks. Trey Lance is priced really affordably on this slate. We know that he has rushing upside, and these quarterbacks who derive a large part of their potential ceiling from rushing make more sense as single stacks. Aiyuk's ceiling, as a strict receiver, unlike Debo, who, like we saw last week, 8 targets, 8 attempts, he's got a split role, and he's often going to get some of his ceiling from rushing, which is unattached from Trey Lance, whereas Brandon Aiyuk strictly going to see a ceiling come from receiving. So I think that he and Trey Lance are actually more positively correlated in terms of hitting their ceilings together as a stack. Only 2 targets last week, 2 catches for 40 yards, but I think Brandon Aiyuk can definitely bounce back in this spot. It's a solid matchup against Seattle. They're at home, should be putting up points. Aiyuk makes a ton of sense as a bounce back buy. I am going to definitely have some exposure to Aiyuk in week 2. Number 2, look, guys, I talked about this heavy last week. If you listened to the podcast, if you checked out any of the streams, you will know that this is a player I was extremely high on. He absolutely burned me, but I'm willing to put the herd aside to be right back in at the same exact price tag on Hollywood Brown, a phenomenal corollary piece here with Darren Waller in that game. And look, last week was tough for Hollywood Truthers. All right, Kyler's former teammate and apparent wide receiver 1 got out-targeted by Greg Dortch. And, as far as statistical results from week 1 goes, this is one of the ones that I believe to be the least sticky. Brown is not going to have a 16.7% target share again, while meanwhile Greg Dortch is popping off for a 25% share. That is definitely a small sample occurrence. I think that we expect things to go back in favor of Hollywood Brown. He had a 95% snap share. He was top 12 in routes run at the wide receiver position. He also finished top 16 in air yards, had a 17-yard average depth of target. That ADOT was good for 8th highest in the league last week. 2 deep targets, 2 red zone targets. He's going to be used in high value ways. He's talented. This is the highest total game on the slate, and the Cardinals are underdogs projected for a fast pace, a high rate of play, and potentially a pass-heavy game script as underdogs. I think that we buy the dip on Hollywood Brown. Hollywood is going to live up to his nickname this week. He's going to make a movie, and that is a film I am trying to see. Hollywood Brown for the win. All right, and last but not least, the number 1, okay, the absolute number 1 tournament play that you can make on DraftKings this week. Does it make me want to throw up in my mouth? Just a little bit, perhaps it does, but 5,500 Allen Robinson. God, let me just talk about this play for a minute. Allen Robinson has been perpetually a disappointment going all the way back to last season. We thought that, maybe he just gave up on the Bears. It was a shitty situation, shitty coaching, bad, environment to be in, right? These guys are going to work. And who wants to work for that Chicago Bears team last year? I get it. I've checked out of jobs. Allen Robinson was checked out. We thought things would be different. That's why we were drafting Allen Robinson in the 4th round all offseason long in best ball. And from a role perspective, he was out there. He was out there on all but 2 snaps for the Rams offense in the kickoff game last Thursday against the Bills. He ran a route on 96% of Stafford's dropbacks. He got open at certain points if you go back and watch the film, but he didn't get targets. Stafford was just locked onto Cooper Kupp, and that could always happen again, right? Stafford and Cooper Kupp's connection is crazy. He still has to establish that with Allen Robinson, but we've heard some quotes this week that the Rams know that they have to get this playmaker the ball more, and A-Rob. At 5,500, he offers leverage off of Cooper Kupp, who's going to be a top 5 owned wide receiver on the slate. He offers leverage off of Tyler Higbee, who's going to be a top 5 tight end in terms of ownership on the slate, and he is leverage off of Darrell Henderson, who's going to be the highest running back on the slate. So you're getting leverage off of 3 highly owned plays. Allen Robinson currently projected for an ownership around 5%. Now, I do expect that to get steamed. I think as all of the big platforms produce their content this week, this is going to be something that a lot of them talk about. It's just, it's too clear of a leverage play to fly under the radar, but still, if A-Rob comes in sub 10%, I am going to be in on tournaments. I think that the ceiling is there. The Rams have the highest implied team total on this slate, and like I said, is supreme leverage off of not 1, not 2, but 3 of the chalkiest plays on the slate. When you have the opportunity to just get that much leverage on the field, you have to take it. I know it's a little gross. Allen Robinson, we haven't seen it in a while. He has the best quarterback he's ever played with, and for that reason, I believe that Allen Robinson is the single best tournament play on DraftKings in week 2. That's going to be it for this week's edition of the video, guys. Like I said, make sure you check out the rest of the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Joey's Cash video is on the channel as we speak. You can check out the late night live stream every Saturday evening at 10 p.m. Eastern for a final look at every NFL main slate of the season. I appreciate everybody out there who's watching. Hope you're all having a great day. And until next week, I'll talk to you guys then.